Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to Sip and Talk.
Sunny.
I'm Joe. How is everyone doing today?
Man, how long has our studio coffee machine been broken? I mean, I feel like my coffee budget is just getting completely out of hand lately.
Yeah, so Sip and Talkers, please subscribe and like to help us get a new coffee machine. But seriously, though, global prices are just soaring right now. Like, I went to my favorite indie cafe in the Bay Area yesterday, ordered an oat milk latte, and when I saw the receipt, I honestly thought I was buying shares in the cafe.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you wonder if inflation is forcing us to just drink tap water or, go moonlight at a coffee farm.
Well, if you actually bought shares, at least you'd get dividends, right? But the truth is, you're just paying for global supply chain markups, Washington's tariff policies, and Silicon Valley engineers who demand the perfect microacidity in their brew.
Okay, sounds absurd, but it's the pressure we feel every day. But seriously, zooming out from this really expensive cup of coffee, the macro environment is even crazier right now.
Exactly. So today we're exploring the latest geopolitics and Wall Street movements. We'll look at foreign policy and what it means for our markets and our wallets. Maybe we spot some trends to boost our purchasing power. But remember, we aren't financial advisors. This is just data for your own independent research. Let's get right into it.
So building right off your point about Washington's tariff policies hitting our everyday costs, the most immediate place we're seeing this play out is actually at the grocery store. It is front and center right now, specifically in the meat aisle.
Yeah, absolutely. So Trump is pushing hard to ease tariffs on ground beef imports. And, the political calculus here is completely transparent, right? It's all about bringing down grocery prices for consumers ahead of the midterms.
Which makes sense, right? If a family goes to the supermarket and sees ground beef under $5 a pound again, that translates directly to votes.
Exactly. The mechanism is just simple supply and demand. You lower the barrier for foreign beef, you flood the domestic market, and retail prices naturally drop.
Right, which on paper sounds amazing for everyday people who just want to, afford a weekend barbecue without draining their savings. But we really have to look at the ripple effect here. What does flooding the market with cheap, imported meat actually do to our domestic supply chains?
Well, it creates an absolute existential crisis for domestic producers. Ranchers in places like Montana and Wyoming are just furious right now.
Because they can't compete with those imported prices.
That, and they are currently dealing with severe multi-year droughts, which means the cost of feed and water for their cattle has just skyrocketed. Their overhead is enormous right now.
Oh, wow. So when Washington suddenly gives a massive leg up to imported beef, these ranchers feel like their livelihoods are being deliberately undercut just to score a short-term political win.
Precisely. It's the ultimate zero-sum game. Managing these tariffs is, it's basically like playing whack-a-mole with our economy. You lower the price of a burger to help the consumer, but you end up whacking the rancher who actually raised the cow.
Yeah, we want lower prices, obviously, but we also want a secure domestic food supply. You can't necessarily have both if you're arbitrarily pulling these tariff levers all the time.
And speaking of pulling levers, that whack-a-mole game is literally on a countdown clock as we speak. We are just hours away from a midnight deadline to finalize a major trade deal between the U.S. and Canada.
Wait, that's tonight?
Tonight. And if negotiators don't reach a compromise, we are staring down the barrel of massive, across-the-board 50% tariffs.
What? 50%? That is completely unprecedented for a direct neighbor.
Yeah.
That would just slow down cross-border trade. It would just completely freeze it, right?
Oh, it would be an absolute disaster. The big sticking point has been auto tariffs. They've been trying to negotiate those down from 25% to 15%, but Trump is playing hardball, demanding major concessions on Canadian dairy imports in exchange.
So it all comes back to dairy. But that leverage play is super dangerous because our supply chains are so deeply integrated, right? Think about how a car is built. An engine block might be cast in Ohio, shipped to Ontario for assembly, and then sent back to Michigan for final installation.
Exactly. A single auto part can cross the U.S.-Canada border 5 or 6 times before a car is even finished. Former Canadian Trade Minister Mary Ng pointed out that a 50% tariff is just the absolute worst-case scenario.
Because it compounds every single time it crosses the border.
Right. It doesn't just raise the price of a sedan. It literally bankrupts the small manufacturer in the Midwest who relies on that cross-border ecosystem.
Man, it just shows how vulnerable we are to the stroke of a pen. But, if trade deals are how Washington tries to manipulate our external costs, we really need to look at how they are managing their own checkbook internally. Because our bond market, it is going absolutely crazy right now.
Yeah, we are seeing violent whiplash in U.S. Treasuries. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent he's actively trying to cap long-term yields right now.
Okay, how exactly is he doing that?
Well, his tactical play is to buy back 30-year government debt, and he's funding it by issuing short-term T-bills.
Wait, let's unpack that for a second, because it sounds kind of insane. If they're funding long-term debt with short-term T-bills, isn't that just a temporary Band-Aid? I mean, that is literally like me paying off my 30-year mortgage using a high-interest credit card just to make this month's budget look good.
That is a perfect analogy.
How is Wall Street not panicking over the long-term math there?
Oh, they absolutely are panicking. And that is exactly why the markets are acting so erratically right now. Bill Dudley recently noted that reducing long-term Treasury debt this way might, move the needle a few basis points today, but it is purely cosmetic.
Right, because you still owe the money.
Exactly. And when you issue massive amounts of short-term T-bills, you are basically pumping near-cash liquidity directly into the financial system. You're effectively printing money in the short term.
And that waters down the purchasing power of the dollar, which I'm guessing is what's triggering what Wall Street keeps calling the debasement trade.
You hit the nail on the head. That fiscal gymnastics routine is entirely responsible for it.
So, just to define this for our Sip&Talkers, the debasement trade basically means investors are terrified that the government is devaluing the currency, so they are running for the exits. They're dumping cash and buying up hard assets as a hedge against inflation.
Right, and the data really speaks for itself here. I mean, Bitcoin just had its best week since March 2023, blasting past $77,000.
Which is wild.
Yeah, rallying hard for a third straight week, dragging gold mining stocks way up into the stratosphere with it. Analysts like Dan Dolev are pointing out this near-perfect correlation between Bitcoin's surge and the M2 money supply.
Right, and just to clarify for everyone, the M2 money supply is essentially the total amount of cash, checking deposits, and just easily accessible money floating around in our economy.
Exactly. So when the government pumps more of it into the system, cash becomes less scarce. People panic about their savings losing value, so they run to assets with a capped supply, like Bitcoin.
And it's not just the big institutions. Even retail platforms are surging. Robinhood is up 14% just off everyday investors trying to ride this crypto wave.
Which puts an unbelievable amount of pressure on the upcoming Jackson Hole Economics Symposium. Fed Chair Kevin Warsh is expected to speak, and markets are absolutely starving for a clear signal on interest rates.
Because he had that rocky press conference back in July, right?
Yeah, it was very vague. So now he has to prove the Federal Reserve is truly independent and committed to fighting inflation, regardless of what the Treasury is actually doing with all these T-bills.
Yeah, markets absolutely hate suspense. The uncertainty of what Warsh might say, combined with this massive liquidity injection, is just throwing rocket fuel on the debasement trade.
For sure.
But this all leads directly into what Silicon Valley is desperately trying to build right now. We are printing all this financial capital, but we are running straight into a brick wall when it comes to our physical capital.
Yeah.
Specifically, our AI infrastructure.
Oh, yeah, the infrastructure bottleneck. So NVIDIA earnings are right around the corner, and they're usually the bellwether for the whole tech sector. Right. But the fundamental narrative underneath those earnings is rapidly shifting.
It's not about the chips anymore, is it?
Nope. For the last 2 years, the bottleneck for artificial intelligence was silicon, right? Getting enough specialized chips. But that phase is over. The new bottleneck is just raw electricity.
Yeah, the numbers in the latest infrastructure reports just blew my mind. The tech industry needs a staggering 150 gigawatts of power just to sustain the current growth trajectory of AI. We are talking about a $5 trillion CapEx build-out.
And CapEx meaning capital expenditures, like the upfront cost of actually pouring concrete and laying cable.
Exactly. It's just a massive amount of money and resources.
To put 150 gigawatts into perspective, 1 gigawatt can power roughly 750,000 homes.
Wow.
Yeah, so 150 gigawatts is like trying to power the entire eastern seaboard just for data centers. In Texas alone, there is currently a 474 gigawatt backlog of power requests sitting in the queue.
That is just unfathomable. It's an infrastructure demand on a scale humanity hasn't seen since we laid the global railroad networks.
Totally. And it's not just electricity either. The massive physical footprint of these data centers is triggering a huge public backlash over water consumption.
Oh, right, because the servers run so hot that they rely on evaporative cooling. Yeah. Even the state-of-the-art so-called closed-loop facilities evaporate millions of gallons of drinking water just to keep the chips from melting. It really makes you wonder, are we building a fleet of Ferraris without realizing we literally have no gas stations to fuel them?
It really seems that way. And that anxiety is actually becoming mainstream culture now. Did you see the viral marketing campaign Liquid Death just launched with Jason Kelce?
Oh my gosh, yes. I did. They made this incredibly high-production commercial, jokingly suggesting that humans should send their urine to cool AI data centers in order to save the planet's drinking water.
Yes. It's so gross, but honestly hilarious. And the satire hits so hard because it points to a very real, very serious physical crisis.
But it's not a total dead end, right? Dr. Liu from the National Academy of Engineering framed this beautifully. He pointed out that while AI compute demand is essentially insatiable, we can't build our way out of this just by laying more power lines.
Right, because the grid just can't handle it.
Exactly. He says the solution is engineering innovation at the chip level. Companies like Micron are currently investing $10 billion into new research labs, specifically to figure out how to dramatically increase energy efficiency.
Which is so critical. Our tech dominance as a nation requires unprecedented physical resources, and right now our power grid is absolutely the weakest link. If we don't engineer our way into vastly smarter power delivery, these advanced chips are just going to be very expensive paperweights.
Well, that physical vulnerability, right? The sheer leverage required to maintain systemic dominance. That is exactly the same dynamic Washington uses when dealing with adversaries on the global stage.
That is a great pivot, because let's talk about that global stage. The situation with Iran is hitting a critical inflection point right now. We've seen 6 months of escalating conflict, but interestingly, Iran's president is now publicly urging an end to the war.
Really? So they're backing down?
Well, he's trying to thread the needle. He's claiming they want to wrap it up with, quote, dignity and victory, which is basically political speak for looking for an off-ramp.
Ugh, saving face. But Washington smells blood in the water, I assume.
Oh, big time. Their strategy is shifting away from kinetic military action and toward what analysts are calling an economic D-Day.
An economic D-Day, that sounds intense.
It is. Trump's plan is to unveil a massive coordinated wave of secondary sanctions designed to completely isolate Iran's economy from the rest of the world.
Let's explain the mechanics of secondary sanctions for a second, because it's fascinating. It's not just the U.S. saying, hey, we won't buy your oil. It's Washington telling the entire global financial system, if any of your banks process a transaction for Iranian oil, you are banned from doing business in U.S. dollars.
Exactly. It forces every country to choose between trading with Iran or trading with the United States. It's a brutal ultimatum. But there is a massive catch to this D-Day strategy.
Let me guess. China.
You got it. Beijing is the undisputed linchpin here because they are the primary buyer of Iranian crude oil. If China decides to ignore the secondary sanctions and just continues buying oil through their independent teapot refineries, the entire economic isolation strategy falls apart instantly.
Which puts us in an incredibly delicate diplomatic dance, doesn't it? Because China's actually playing a bit of a stabilizing role in the crude market right now by voluntarily reducing their imports.
Yeah, they are. But if Washington applies too much blunt force with these new sanctions, we risk totally disrupting the fragile trade détente we have with Beijing right ahead of a major bilateral summit.
So it requires extreme precision. Washington is trying to meticulously throttle the global flow of oil without accidentally crashing the broader geopolitical system. But you know, the irony here is just rich.
How so?
Wow. You contrast that delicate, hyper-calculated global leverage with the absolute blunt force trauma of how executive power is being wielded domestically. I am talking about the new White House ballroom.
Oh my goodness, this story. I cannot get over this.
Right. So Trump has been building this massive new grand ballroom at the White House. And to do it, he literally had crews tear down the historic East Wing.
And the kicker is he did it entirely without congressional approval or funding authorization, just completely bypassed Congress.
Exactly. So lower federal courts immediately stepped in and ruled that the entire project was completely illegal, and they ordered construction to halt.
But then Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts issued a temporary stay. He basically gave a green light for the bulldozers to keep running while the legal fight slowly drags its way through the courts.
Yeah, and because of that stay, the ballroom is already 60% finished. They have construction crews working 20-hour shifts under floodlights at midnight.
It's wild. The strategy is purely mechanical. If you build the physical structure fast enough, by the time the courts finally issue a definitive ruling, it will be too late to tear it down. It's the ultimate ask for forgiveness later move.
Or, not even asking for forgiveness at all. It really makes you step back and look at the duality of executive power. Abroad, they use surgical economic tools, complex sanctions, and this delicate diplomacy to corner adversaries. But in their own backyard, the strategy is basically just deploying midnight bulldozers on federal property and daring the judicial branch to stop them.
Yeah, it's quite the contrast. But hey, from geopolitical power plays to where the real cultural power is shifting, let's step into a different arena entirely. The massive explosion of capital in the business of sports and health.
Oh, I love this topic. The valuations we are seeing in professional sports right now are just completely untethered from traditional reality. I mean, the Los Angeles Lakers are currently being valued at a record-breaking $12.5 billion.
It's staggering. Private equity firms are flooding into sports ownership at a rate we have literally never seen before.
Yeah, legendary sports agent Lee Steinberg put this into brilliant historical context. He noted that back in 1976, 2 NFL expansion teams were purchased for just $16.5 million total.
Wow, $16.5 million for 2 teams.
Right. And today, you have single franchises valued well over $12 billion. This influx of institutional capital is completely changing the power dynamic. We aren't dealing with eccentric, local millionaires anymore. We're dealing with syndicates of what they call multiple billionaires.
Well, private equity firms have to park their billions somewhere, right? And sports teams offer this incredible artificial scarcity. There are only so many NBA or NFL teams in existence.
Exactly. But here is where the mechanics of this get really interesting for the actual labor, the players themselves. Because of the new NIL rules, name, image, and likeness, the floodgates are completely open for amateur athletes. We literally have 17-year-old college kids making millions of dollars before they even play a single professional game.
It's a whole new world. Steinberg mentioned a specific college quarterback who was offered a $4 million NIL package by LSU, and before the ink was even dry, a wealthy Michigan alum swooped in and offered the kid $14 million.
$14 million for a college kid? That is insane.
Yeah, it's a completely open, deregulated free market.
Which totally changes the psychology of the athlete, right?
Yeah.
These players are waking up to a fundamental reality. They are the core intellectual property. If you are a generational talent, you are the reason the franchise value jumps by $3 billion in 5 years.
That's exactly Steinberg's point. He predicts that very soon, top-tier players are going to stop negotiating for mere salary, and they're going to start demanding actual equity in the franchises they build.
Which makes perfect sense. I mean, if a tech founder gets equity for building a company, why shouldn't the star athlete get equity for building a multi-billion-dollar entertainment brand?
It really raises the question of whether we are in a massive sports valuation bubble or if we are just entering a new era where athletes finally capture the value they create.
Totally. And speaking of athletes pivoting their focus to capture new value, former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson is making a really fascinating move in the health food space.
Oh, yeah, this is wild. The fiercest fighter on the planet is now selling sliders in the grocery aisle.
I know, it sounds like a joke, but it's actually highly strategic. He is launching a line of high-protein, completely seed oil-free sliders. He is explicitly aligning this brand with RFK Jr.'s broader political push to make America healthy again.
Yeah, Tyson gave this really candid interview where he talked about how during his fighting crime, he used to just fast and starve himself to make weight. He said it was brutal.
Right, and now he's completely shifted his philosophy toward cutting out highly processed calories and seed oils. It is quite the pivot, going from knocking people out in the boxing ring to knocking out toxic seed oils at the supermarket.
It perfectly illustrates where capital and cultural attention are flowing right now. I mean, people are deeply concerned about what they consume, whether it's the ingredients in their food or the inflation eating away their wallets.
It really does tie everything we've talked about today together. From the sticker shock of those oat milk lattes and the midnight tariff deadlines threatening our supply chains, all the way to the massive energy grids required to power our AI future and the billions of dollars pouring into our cultural entertainment.
It's all connected by how power, whether it's electrical, political, or financial, is being distributed and leveraged.
It leaves you with so much to process. But I keep coming back to that sports equity concept. With private equity buying up these sports monopolies and athletes waking up to their true market value, how long until we see a major multi-billion-dollar sports franchise completely majority-owned by a syndicate of its own active players?
Now that is a paradigm-shifting thought. It would completely invert the traditional billionaire-owner model we've had for a century.
Absolutely. Well, just a quick reminder for all our listeners. Our discussion today is purely objective reporting on global facts, meant to encourage independent, critical thinking. We do not criticize or discriminate against any country, group, or people. This is all about exploring the data, and it is definitely not financial advice.
For sure. Sip&Talkers, don't forget to subscribe to Sip&Talk so you never miss a deep dive into the forces shaping our world.
And while you're browsing online today, you absolutely have to check out our good friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life. He just dropped his latest travel vlog, and you have to see what ridiculous funny thing he did in front of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It is classic Mickey.
Well, it's definitely worth your time. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
See you next time. Oh, gosh, I just spilled a little coffee there. But